Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today we dive into the 7th episode of the Harry Potter Secrets series. For those who have just joined, let me remind you that here I reveal hidden aspects from the books that were not shown in the movies but do not contradict them. Enjoy watching. Number 1. A Rat's Deed. In the movie Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, it is told that the death of Harry's parents was caused by their old friend Sirius Black, who had recently escaped from prison. However, it later turns out that the real culprit was Peter Pettigrew, and we begin to wonder, what role did he play in the Potters' tragedy? How did it come to be that he was entrusted with the secret, and why couldn't Sirius prove his innocence? The answer lies in the book. When Snape informed Dumbledore about Voldemort's plan to kill baby Harry, the Fidelius charm was placed on the Potter's house to hide its location from everyone. A key point was the appointment of the secret keeper, the only one who knew where the Potters were. Initially, Sirius Black was meant to be the secret keeper, but at the last moment, he persuaded James and Lily to entrust this role to Peter Pettigrew. This mistake became fatal. When Voldemort learned from Pettigrew the location of the Potters, tragedy became inevitable. Sirius, feeling guilty, ended up in Azkaban, and only later, during his escape, was able to tell Harry the truth. Number 2. Without the Time Turner. Hermione, known for her thirst for knowledge, attended every possible lecture by the 3rd year, even Muggle studies, where she could barely learn anything. For this, McGonagall received a Time Turner from the Ministry of Magic, allowing Hermione to attend multiple classes simultaneously. This moment is not revealed in the film, but even with such an artifact, Hermione experienced tremendous stress. So what did she do when she was without the Time Turner? The answer is simple. She just dropped some subjects. Hermione gave up divination and Muggle studies, which allowed her to return to a normal pace and avoid burnout. In an interview with Ron, she explained that she could no longer handle so many classes. Number 3. Stan Shunpike's Secret. In the film, Stan Shunpike appears as the conductor of the night bus, but his role ends quickly. However, in the books, his story continues. In Half-Blood Prince, it is revealed that Stan was arrested on suspicion of assisting the Death Eaters. He was detained after being overheard discussing Voldemort's secret plans. It later turns out that Stan was under the Imperius Curse, which explains his strange behavior in Deathly Hallows, where he is seen among the attackers on Harry Potter. Number 4. Buckbeak's Fate. After the events of Prisoner of Azkaban, viewers may have thought that Buckbeak stayed with Sirius Black. However, in the books, his fate continued. After Sirius's death, the Hippogriff was passed on to Harry Potter, and later returned to Hagrid. In Half-Blood Prince, Buckbeak ended up in the care of a giant and continued living under the name of Mahon. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Buckbeak participated in defending the castle, fighting giants, and assisting the Thestrals. He proved his loyalty and courage at the most crucial moment. Number 5. The Limits of Magic. Despite their incredible abilities, wizards are not all-powerful. For instance, some injuries caused by magical curses cannot be healed. In Deathly Hallows, Hermione mentions exceptions to the law of transfiguration, one of which is that wizards cannot create food from nothing. This limitation makes even the most powerful wizards vulnerable when it comes to ensuring food for themselves and others. Number 6. Shadows of the Magical World. In the Harry Potter series, magic is often depicted as grand and boundless, with wizards effortlessly performing extraordinary feats. However, the reality of the magical world is far darker and more complex. One such example is the magic that leaves behind shadows. These are traces of spells that cannot be erased, no matter how powerful the magic used. The books explore this idea in depth, showing how spells cast upon people leave lingering marks that affect them long after the incantation has been spoken. These traces are not just physical but emotional and psychological, creating lasting scars that no spell can undo. One of the most striking examples of this is the scar on Harry's forehead, left by Voldemort when he attempted to kill him as a baby. In the films, the significance of this mark is somewhat glossed over, but in the books it plays a major role in Harry's experience throughout the series. The scar is not just a reminder of that fateful night, it is a constant reminder of Voldemort's presence in Harry's life. As Harry grows older, the scar becomes a psychic link to the Dark Lord. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Harry says, "Every time he gets near, I can feel it. My scar burns." This line reveals the deep mental and emotional toll Voldemort's influence has on Harry. No magic can remove the scars, physical or mental, that Voldemort's presence leaves behind. Harry's connection to the Dark Lord becomes a burden, one that he must carry throughout his journey, a permanent shadow of dark magic that cannot be erased. Number 7, the mystery of the magical maps. The Marauder's Map is one of the most fascinating magical objects in the wizarding world. It's a map that shows not only the locations of people but also reveals hidden passages within Hogwarts, making it an invaluable tool for those who need to move unseen. But as convenient as it seems, the map has its limitations. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry and his friends attempt to use the map to find a secret room at the Ministry of Magic, but they are unable to locate it. Not every spellcaster can sense magic around them, especially if it's hidden from view, Hermione explains, revealing the flaw in relying solely on the map. The map shows the physical locations of people, but it can't account for magical barriers that shield certain areas from detection. This limitation is significant, for it demonstrates how the map is not a perfect tool, but rather one that depends on the magical environment in which it is used. The Ministry of Magic, with its powerful enchantments, is one place where the map's magic is ineffective. The same applies to other areas in the wizarding world where powerful protections are in place, such as the secretive rooms that Harry and his friends sometimes need to find. In these situations, the map's inability to detect these hidden enchantments reveals how even the most advanced magical tools have their vulnerabilities, and it highlights the importance of knowledge beyond what can be seen on a map. Number 8. The Legend of the Swords of Gryffindor. The Sword of Gryffindor is far more than just a magical artifact, though the films present it as a tool that conveniently appears in moments of need. In the books, its significance runs much deeper. The sword was not merely enchanted, it was a symbol of Gryffindor's own bravery and valor, designed to become stronger with each act of courage from its wielder. The sword's power is tied to its connection to the Gryffindor house, but also to a greater, ancient system of magic, one that could alter the course of history. Each time the sword was used for a noble cause, it grew in strength, responding to the courage of the one who wielded it. This fact is seen when Harry uses it to defeat the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. Dumbledore later explains to Harry in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, "The sword will only be strengthened when it is worthy." This line reveals that the sword is not just a weapon, but a reflection of the character and honor of those who possess it. However, what the films fail to emphasize is the sword's deeper connection to the Hallows and the relics that could have changed the course of wizarding history. While the film shows the sword as a simple weapon of power, the book highlights its place in a much larger magical legacy. The sword was not just passed down to Gryffindor's descendants, but it was also tied to the ancient wizarding world's battles against darkness. It was a part of an ancient system of relics, like the Resurrection Stone and the Elder Wand, which had the potential to rewrite history itself. In the Deathly Hallows, Harry realizes that the sword, along with the other Hallows, represents an essential part of the fight against evil. More than just a tool, it was a symbol of everything Gryffindor stood for: bravery, sacrifice, and the ability to rise against darkness, no matter the odds. Number 9. Forgotten characters. Professor Quirrell is a prime example of a character whose depth is completely lost in the films. In the movie, he is portrayed merely as a weak and nervous teacher who becomes a vessel for Voldemort's soul. But in the books, his character is much more complex. Quirrell was not simply a puppet of the Dark Lord, he was a man who had once shown promise and even possessed powerful magic. His fate was tragic. Quirrell's ability to resist the dark influence of Voldemort is highlighted when he struggles against the possession. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Harry finally faces Quirrell, the professor says, "It's not your fault. I tried to fight, but I couldn't." His internal battle adds a layer of tragedy to his eventual downfall. His desperation to free himself from Voldemort's grasp reveals the horror of his fate, one not merely caused by betrayal, but by the relentless force of dark magic that overtook him. Filch, the caretaker of Hogwarts, also carries a significant yet overlooked backstory. In the films, he is shown as a bitter and somewhat comical figure, always grumbling about the students. However, in the books, Filch's loneliness and deep sense of rejection are much more profound. He is a squib, someone born into the wizarding world without the ability to perform magic. This fact torments him, as he is surrounded by those who possess the very powers he longs for. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, we see him sneer at the students with a bitterness born from his inability to participate in the magic he cares so much about. "I'd give anything to be able to do magic," he confesses to Harry. His sense of isolation, as well as his painful memories of being excluded from the world of magic, are crucial to understanding his character. Yet these emotional layers are almost entirely absent from the films, leaving Filch as little more than a grumpy, one-dimensional figure. Both Quirrell and Filch serve as reminders that not all characters in the Harry Potter series are defined by their role in the grand battle between good and evil. Their struggles are personal, filled with regret, loneliness, and a yearning for something more. These complexities give them a depth that the films gloss over, and by omitting these backstories, the films lose much of the richness of the characters. The emotional weight of Quirrell's internal battle and Filch's silent suffering speaks to the broader themes of the series: the cost of ambition, the pain of being different, and the devastating effects of dark forces. Number 10. Lessons in Dark Magic. Dark magic plays a pivotal role in the Harry Potter universe, yet its true depth is only hinted at in the films. Hogwarts, while teaching students many magical arts, strictly forbids the use of the dark arts. However, as revealed in the books, there are always those willing to bend the rules. Private lessons, often held in secret, teach aspiring wizards how to manipulate dangerous spells that are forbidden by the school. This is seen in the case of Tom Riddle, who, as a student, eagerly sought out knowledge of the dark arts. "I can teach you how to defend yourself, but I cannot teach you what you really want to know," Dumbledore warns Harry, hinting at the power and temptation that comes with such knowledge. The dark arts go beyond the killing curse, Avada Kedavra. In the books, we learn about more insidious and complicated forms of magic. The ability to manipulate the mind and create creatures capable of stealing souls or turning people into stone are just a few examples. The book describes a terrifying spell, the Cruciatus Curse, which causes immense pain, a magical tool used to break someone's will. One of the most chilling aspects of this magic is its ability to control others, particularly through the Imperious Curse. This curse makes the victim do the caster's bidding, and we see its true power when Barty Crouch. Junior uses it on Cedric Diggory during the Tri-Wizard tournament, forcing him to perform tasks against his will. Voldemort's mastery of these dark spells is what makes him a terrifying figure. He uses these forbidden arts not only to control others, but to secure his immortality. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, we learn of his creation of Horcruxes, objects in which he placed parts of his soul to ensure he could never truly die. This process involves splitting the soul, which is as dark as it is unnatural. Harry, much to his horror, discovers that Voldemort's quest for power was not only about conquering others, but about achieving eternal life. "It is the greatest magic, Harry," Dumbledore tells him, "but it comes at a cost." These complex, darker aspects of magic are often brushed over in the films, but form the backbone of much of the conflict in the wizarding world. The dark arts are not just tools for destruction, but symbols of the wizard's choice to embrace power at any cost. It's not the spells themselves, but the willingness to use them that defines a wizard's true nature. And it's this choice, embodied in characters like Tom Riddle and later Voldemort, that ultimately leads to their downfall. Number 11, the Malfoy Curse. Lucius Malfoy had always been a loyal supporter of Voldemort, but his allegiance was never as absolute as it seemed. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, his internal conflict becomes impossible to ignore. He may have once believed in the Dark Lord's vision, but as the years passed, he began to feel the weight of his choices. Lucius, like many of Voldemort's followers, was trapped in a dangerous game. His position in the Death Eater ranks was strong, yet his fear for his family became his most consuming emotion. When Voldemort demanded that Draco carry out a mission that would almost certainly lead to his death, Lucius's fear became palpable. "I am not like you," he mutters in the book, realizing he no longer wants to be part of the darkness that has consumed his life. Lucius's dilemma escalates as he sees Draco's growing involvement with the Death Eaters. He realizes that Voldemort's power is no longer something he can navigate with clever words and deceit. It's a point of no return, and Lucius finds himself utterly helpless. In Half-Blood Prince, he confesses to Narcissa, his wife, that he is terrified for their son. "I cannot protect him," he admits, his voice hollow with regret. This is not the same man who once proudly stood by Voldemort's side. The man who had been certain of his beliefs is now broken, overwhelmed by the consequences of his past decisions. He is torn between the family he loves and the dark world he cannot escape. Lucius's struggle comes to a head when he is forced to reconcile with the truth. Voldemort is no longer a figure he can manipulate or bargain with. Lucius is unable to protect Draco from Voldemort's growing cruelty. In a chilling moment of realization, Lucius knows his son is marked for death, and there is nothing he can do. "The Dark Lord has asked me to do this," he says, as if that could justify his actions, but deep down Lucius understands that this is no longer about serving a powerful dark wizard. It's about survival, and that survival comes at the cost of his humanity. As the story unfolds, Lucius becomes a shadow of his former self. He is no longer the proud man who wore his dark mark as a badge of honor. The curse of the Malfoy family is not just their alliance with Voldemort, but the legacy of fear and helplessness that haunts them. Lucius's path is a tragic one, a man who chose darkness, but in the end is undone by it. His last moments in the series show a broken man, defeated not by the power of the Dark Lord, but by his own inability to protect his son, and free his family from the curse they have carried for so long. Lucius Malfoy's journey is a stark reminder that allegiance to dark forces always comes at a price. Number 12. Harry's friends, not just wizards. Harry, Hermione, and Ron were never just friends supporting each other in tough times. Their bond went deeper, embodying ideals that shaped Harry's very existence. Hermione Granger, a Muggle-born witch, struggled with more than just her studies. Her identity placed her between two worlds, neither fully belonging to one nor the other. In the magical world, she was often called Mudblood by those who couldn't accept her. Despite her brilliance, the term haunted her, reminding her that she would never be completely accepted by all. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Draco Malfoy insults her, she snaps, her anger a fierce reflection of her struggle. "You'll pay for that one day, Malfoy. I don't care if you're a Slytherin." Her fight was not just against Voldemort, but against a world that saw her as inferior. Ron Weasley, the loyal friend, had his own battles. He never felt as extraordinary as Harry or Hermione, constantly overshadowed by their brilliance. He was a Weasley, always in the shadow of his many siblings, always trying to prove he was worth something. "I'm not good enough," Ron once confessed to Harry in the Philosopher's Stone, his insecurity eating at him. In the quiet moments, Ron's feelings of inadequacy were clear. While Harry was destined to defeat Voldemort, Ron was struggling to find his place. His jealousy wasn't born from malice, but from his deep-seated fear of not measuring up. Yet despite his doubts, Ron found the courage to stand by Harry, even when it seemed like the odds were insurmountable. These feelings were a constant undercurrent in their journey. The films touched on their loyalty but missed the emotional weight of their growth. Hermione wasn't just a friend, she was the embodiment of resilience against a world that judged her. Ron wasn't just the funny sidekick, he was a deeply conflicted character, learning to accept his worth no matter how much he compared himself to others. In the Deathly Hallows, when Ron returns to help Harry and Hermione, his choice isn't just about fighting a war, it's about understanding his value. "I'm not a hero," he said. But he was wrong. He had been one all along. It wasn't magic that made them heroes, it was their unwavering belief in each other. Their courage was drawn from more than just spells. It came from knowing who they were, in spite of the odds stacked against them. Number 13, The Mystery of the Dying Tom. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the image of Tom Riddle begins to form in the mind of the reader as Harry uncovers the history of the mysterious diary. Tom Riddle, as a student of Hogwarts, is initially presented as charming, intelligent, and ambitious. He is a natural leader, someone who gains the trust and admiration of his peers with ease. However, the secrets behind his charm and the darkness lurking beneath the surface are not immediately apparent. His actions, though clever and seemingly innocent, already show a dangerous desire for control. As we follow Harry's investigation into the diary, we slowly uncover that Riddle was no ordinary student. He had a deep, almost unnatural connection to the dark arts, and as we find out later in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, his transformation into Lord Voldemort was neither sudden nor accidental. The tragic nature of Voldemort's journey is carefully detailed in J.K. Rowling's books, although the films only scratch the surface of this complexity. In the movie adaptations, the explanation of Voldemort's origins is often reduced to a few lines, leaving much of his transformation unexplored. The films portray him as a ruthless, dark wizard without delving deeply into the human story behind the monster. In contrast, the books reveal the depths of Tom Riddle's emotional struggles and how they shaped the man who would become Voldemort. Voldemort's backstory is tragic, not just because of the circumstances of his birth, but because of how those circumstances shaped his worldview. Born to a witch named Merope Gaunt and a wealthy muggle, Tom Riddle was the product of a violent relationship, one that ended with his mother's death shortly after his birth. His father, Tom Riddle Sr., abandoned his mother when she was pregnant, and when he later returned, it was only to witness the death of the woman he had once despised. The coldness of his father's rejection and the indifference of his mother's family had an irreversible effect on Riddle. From the moment he was born, Tom Riddle was surrounded by neglect and abandonment, leading to a profound loneliness that would shape his future actions. At an early age, Tom Riddle discovered that he was different from the other children around him. He was not only gifted with extraordinary magical abilities, but he could also manipulate and control those around him. These traits, coupled with his keen intellect, made him a natural leader, one who was always at the top of his class. But it was not only his ability to excel that set him apart, it was his ability to bend others to his will. Tom Riddle was a master manipulator, capable of using his charm and magical prowess to make others serve him. His sense of superiority and entitlement grew as he realized just how easily he could make people obey him. However, this sense of power came at a cost. Tom Riddle's connection to his humanity began to deteriorate as he embraced the darker aspects of magic. He started to see his peers as tools to be used, and he began to experiment with darker forms of magic that were shunned by most witches and wizards. The transformation into Voldemort, while gradual, marked the point at which Tom Riddle completely severed his ties to any semblance of compassion or empathy. His early experiences, particularly his abandonment by his father, made him distrustful of others, and this led him to seek dominance over the wizarding world. Voldemort believed that the only way to gain true power was to rid the world of those he deemed inferior, namely Muggles and Muggle-borns. This obsession with purity and control, however, was built on an unstable foundation of bitterness and self-loathing. As Tom Riddle's power grew, so did his cruelty. He manipulated those around him, including fellow students and professors at Hogwarts, to further his goals. One of the key moments in his development as a dark wizard occurred when he discovered the secret of Horcruxes. This dark magic allowed him to split his soul and encase parts of it within objects, ensuring his immortality. It was an act of self-preservation, but also a final step away from humanity. Each Horcrux he created further fragmented his soul, making him less and less human. By the time he became Lord Voldemort, he was more monster than man, having forsaken any sense of empathy, love, or connection to others. The story of Tom Riddle's transformation into Voldemort is not just a tale of ambition and power, but of loss and despair. He was a young boy, abandoned by his father, raised in an environment that rejected him, and left with a deep sense of isolation. These formative experiences turned him into someone who believed that power was the only way to protect oneself from the world's cruelty. His obsession with controlling others was a direct result of the abandonment he suffered early in life. But in his quest for domination, he lost everything that could have made him whole. Voldemort's story is tragic because it is ultimately a tale of self-destruction. His refusal to acknowledge the humanity of others and, eventually, his own humanity led to his downfall. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, we see glimpses of Tom Riddle's past through the pensieve, a magical object that allows the viewer to relive memories. In these memories, we see the young Tom Riddle struggling with his identity and his connection to the magical world. These moments of vulnerability reveal the true complexity of his character. The film adaptation, however, only briefly touches on these aspects of his life, choosing instead to focus on his darker persona as Voldemort. The true tragedy of his character is obscured, as the films portray him primarily as an embodiment of evil rather than as a deeply conflicted and tragic individual. Number 14. Why Voldemort cannot kill Harry. In the magical world of Harry Potter, the conflict between the boy who lived and the Dark Lord, Voldemort, stretches far beyond mere hatred or rivalry. On the surface, the reason for Voldemort's obsession with Harry seems simple: the prophecy that foretells the downfall of the Dark Lord at the hands of a child born in the end of July. However, as we delve deeper into the wizarding world, particularly through the lens of the books, the true reasons behind Voldemort's inability to kill Harry are far more complex and intertwined with the very fabric of magic itself. The connection between Harry and Voldemort is not merely one of prophecy, but of an ancient and deep magic that binds them in ways that neither fully understands. The story of their link begins even before Harry's birth, when Voldemort, in his unrelenting quest for power, decided that he could no longer allow the prophecy to exist. Driven by paranoia, he sought to eliminate the child who might be his undoing. Yet, by seeking to destroy Harry, Voldemort unwittingly set in motion a sequence of events that would make Harry his equal in a way that even he could not foresee. The prophecy may have been the catalyst, but the magic that binds them goes far beyond its simple prediction. At the heart of this connection is the most crucial, albeit often overlooked, aspect of their relationship: the magical bond that was forged when Voldemort tried to kill Harry as an infant. This bond was not merely a result of the spell he cast, but a consequence of the powerful magic that protected Harry, the same magic that his mother, Lily, gave him in her final act of sacrifice. The love Lily Potter had for her son was more potent than Voldemort's curse, and as a result, Harry's body rejected the killing curse. This was the first step in their magical intertwining. When Voldemort returned to power in The Goblet of Fire, he came back not merely as a man, but as a being sustained by dark magic, tied to the very essence of his followers, the Death Eaters, and the cursed object of his snake, Nagini. In that moment of his return, Voldemort was far weaker than he had been before, a shadow of his former self, reliant on dark forces to rebuild himself. It was this dark resurrection that created another thread in the web of their connection. The piece of Voldemort's soul, the fragment that had attached itself to Harry, was not simply an accidental consequence. It was a deliberate and necessary part of Voldemort's return, a link to the boy who survived. The piece of Voldemort's soul within Harry is a dangerous secret, one that Voldemort himself cannot know, but it is this very piece that explains why Voldemort is unable to kill Harry. The piece of soul, embedded in Harry's body, gives him a unique status as Voldemort's equal and inextricably binds their fates. Voldemort's inability to kill Harry is not just due to the prophecy, but because, at a fundamental level, the Dark Lord cannot destroy a piece of his own soul. The magical consequences of the Dark Resurrection have created a loop of shared destiny between them. One of the most striking aspects of their connection is how it manifests through Nagini, Voldemort's snake. Nagini is no ordinary magical creature. As a vessel for Voldemort's own dark magic, she is a conduit for his will, and through her, Harry experiences a deeper connection to Voldemort's thoughts and actions. Nagini's role in this mystical bond cannot be understated. She is not only a means of control for Voldemort, but also an extension of his being. The significance of Nagini in the books extends beyond her role as a physical threat to Harry. She is part of the magic that ensures the survival of Voldemort's soul. When Harry's connection to Nagini is revealed in The Half-Blood Prince, it becomes apparent that their fates are tied not just through the shared piece of Voldemort's soul within Harry, but also through the magical conduit that Nagini represents. This serpent, a symbol of Voldemort's power, serves as a constant reminder of the power that Voldemort holds over Harry's life. However, this connection is also the key to understanding why Voldemort cannot simply destroy Harry. The magic that sustains Nagini Voldemort's soul is the same magic that allows Harry to survive the many encounters with death. It is a paradox that makes their ultimate battle inevitable. Throughout the series, Harry's survival can be seen as the result of multiple layers of protective magic. The sacrificial love of his mother, the strength of his character, and the peace of Voldemort's soul within him all play a role in keeping him alive. The most significant of these, however, is the protection bestowed upon Harry by his mother's love, which transcends ordinary magic. This love is a defense against the darkness of Voldemort, a force so powerful that it prevents Voldemort from being able to take Harry's life. The peace of soul within Harry is a cruel reminder of the tragedy of Voldemort's existence, a broken, fragmented soul trying desperately to maintain its power while tethered to the very person it sought to destroy. Number 15. Harry's forgotten attachment. Harry Potter's journey is one of grand battles, destiny, and the fight against evil, but woven through his heroic acts is a quieter, more human struggle. The films, focusing on his magical trials and triumphs, often gloss over the quieter, deeper themes of loss and attachment that were central to J.K. Rowling's books. One of the most poignant aspects of Harry's story, rarely explored in depth on screen, is the complexity of his relationships, particularly the unspoken grief he carries for those he has lost, and how those losses shape him throughout his journey. Harry's relationship with his parents, though central to his identity, is marked by the tragedy of their untimely deaths. His mother Lily and father James are figures in his life who are present only in memory, their deaths a lingering sorrow that defines his earliest years. While Harry is often depicted as emotionally resilient and steadfast in his mission to stop Voldemort, the films fail to capture the depth of the yearning he feels for the parents he never truly knew. The brief flashes of memories of them, seen through the mirror of Erist or in the pensive, are stark reminders of what Harry has lost. He is driven not only by a desire for justice, but also by an aching emptiness, a longing for a family he can never reclaim. Yet the emotional weight of Harry's early life is not only about the loss of his parents. His life at the Dursleys, while shown as a painful backdrop in the films, does not fully communicate the immense loneliness he felt during his formative years. Harry grows up in a home where affection and love are foreign concepts. His aunt, uncle, and cousin subject him to neglect and cruelty, leaving him starved for connection. The lack of a true family in his childhood creates a void that Harry seeks to fill with friends and mentors throughout his life. These early years form the bedrock of his attachments, making his later relationships all the more significant. One of the deepest emotional currents in Harry's life is the attachment he forms with Sirius Black. Sirius is not just a godfather to Harry. He represents the father figure that Harry had longed for. His bond with Sirius is profound, formed on shared pain and mutual understanding. Sirius provides Harry with the closest thing he has to a family, and the grief of losing him in the Order of the Phoenix strikes Harry in a way that is almost unbearable. The moment when Harry watches Sirius fall through the veil in the Department of Mysteries is one of the most harrowing moments in the series. It is not just the loss of a mentor or ally, it is the loss of the last remaining person who had truly cared for him as a father would. The pain of this loss is compounded by the fact that Harry is left alone once again, this time not only without his parents, but without the closest thing to a parent he had left. What makes Harry's grief over Sirius more poignant is the way it is contrasted with his often unspoken relationship with his two closest friends, Ron and Hermione. While the trio is inseparable, the films tend to focus on their collective efforts to combat Voldemort rather than the underlying personal tensions and emotional distances that arise between them. In the books, Harry's relationships with both Ron and Hermione are complex and fraught with moments of hurt and misunderstanding. There are moments where Harry feels abandoned by them, especially during the search for the Horcruxes in the 7th book. In the film, the strain between the trio is barely touched upon, yet in the books it becomes one of Harry's most painful emotional struggles. Harry feels the weight of his responsibility to defeat Voldemort so heavily that it begins to alienate him from the very people who are most important to him. The strain of their journey, especially when they are on the run in the Deathly Hallows, is evident. Harry is often consumed by his own thoughts and isolation, feeling that his friends cannot truly understand the depth of his burden. Meanwhile, Ron, feeling overshadowed by Harry's fame and importance, often wrestles with his own insecurities. Hermione, ever the pragmatic one, tries to hold the group together, but even she struggles with the magnitude of the task at hand. As much as they love him, they are not immune to the pressures and fears that build up throughout the story. Even after Ron's departure from the trio during their quest, it is Harry's feelings of abandonment that linger most heavily. He internalizes the belief that he is better off alone, that the burden of his mission is something that must be shouldered by him and him alone. He distances himself from Ron and Hermione, convinced that it is easier to face danger and make decisions on his own. This is especially true after the death of Dumbledore, when Harry is left to grapple with the knowledge that the fight against Voldemort is now his responsibility alone. Despite the unwavering support of his friends, Harry often feels unworthy of their loyalty and love, leading him to push them away in subtle but heartbreaking ways. The sense of being misunderstood by his closest allies is another emotional theme that resonates throughout the series. Harry feels as though no one can truly grasp what it means to be him. The weight of the prophecy, the expectation to destroy Voldemort, and the loss of so many important people in his life. He often withdraws into himself, not wanting to burden his friends with his personal grief and doubts. Even the occasional moments of joy with Ron and Hermione do little to assuage the overwhelming grief Harry carries. Number 16, Riddle's Cursed Book. In the magical world of Harry Potter, few objects are as mysterious and as dangerous as Tom Riddle's diary. This seemingly innocuous book plays a pivotal role in the second installment of the series, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. However, its significance extends far beyond what the films portray. While the movies focus on the immediate threat it poses to Ginny Weasley and the school, the diary's deeper, darker origins are left largely unexplored. To understand the true power of this artifact, we must delve into the hidden layers that the books offer, revealing a much more sinister history. Tom Riddle's diary is not just a journal. It is an artifact created with dark magic designed to manipulate and control those who come into contact with it. In the films, we witness the diary's malevolent influence on Ginny, but its true nature is far more complex. The diary is not merely a book filled with Riddle's thoughts, but a vessel imbued with a fragment of his soul, created as part of his quest to preserve his life through dark and forbidden means. Unlike most magical objects, this diary possesses its own consciousness and can communicate with its owner, acting as a conduit for Riddle's will. The significance of this artifact goes beyond simple possession. It represents a method of survival and domination. Riddle, who would later become the infamous Lord Voldemort, had an uncanny ability to understand the intricacies of dark magic. As a student at Hogwarts, he used the diary as a means to manipulate Ginny Weasley, a vulnerable and impressionable young girl. The book becomes a tool of possession, subtly influencing her actions and pushing her towards dangerous decisions. The dark magic infused within the diary allows Riddle to exert a form of control over Ginny, bending her to his will without her even realizing it. However, the book's true power lies not only in the manipulation of Ginny, but in its ability to act as a bridge between the physical world and the remnants of Riddle's soul. The diary is not just a magical object. It is a link to the past, a window into the twisted mind of Tom Riddle. Through it, Riddle is able to partially manifest himself, existing as an echo of his former self. This ability to linger in the physical world is one of the darkest aspects of the diary. The magical object is a form of Horcrux, a dark relic designed to allow its creator to cheat death by hiding pieces of their soul. In creating the diary, Riddle essentially trapped a fragment of his essence within it, ensuring that part of him would live on indefinitely even if his physical form perished. This was a strategy he would later perfect as he split his soul into multiple Horcruxes, but the diary represents the first step in that long and horrific process. One of the most chilling aspects of the diary is its ability to influence not only the actions of its owner, but also the events surrounding it. Ginny, under the diary's influence, unknowingly opens the Chamber of Secrets, releasing the basilisk that terrorizes the students of Hogwarts. Yet, this is just the beginning of the diary's dark power. The book also acts as a conduit for Riddle to manipulate the situation to his advantage. As Ginny becomes more deeply consumed by the diary, she begins to act out of character, her thoughts and actions increasingly directed by the malevolent force within the book. The diary's true influence becomes clear when Harry Potter, in his quest to save Ginny, stumbles upon its secret. The moment Harry encounters the diary and speaks with the memory of Tom Riddle, the true horror of the object is revealed. It is not just a diary, but a sentient being with its own desires and motives. The memory of Riddle, trapped within the pages of the book, seeks to use Harry as a pawn in his grand scheme. He manipulates the young boy into thinking that he is merely reliving events of the past, but in reality, Harry is facing a piece of Riddle's soul, and that soul is determined to continue its dark work. Riddle's manipulations lead Harry into a trap, where he must confront the basilisk, a creature that has been summoned by the diary's influence to wreak havoc on the school. But the diary's true purpose is not just to harm or control. It is part of a much larger, more insidious plan. The diary is a means for Riddle to ensure his legacy and to preserve his name in the world long after his physical death. By placing a fragment of his soul in the diary, he ensures that part of him will continue to exist, influencing future generations and carrying out his will, even in the form of a memory. The diary becomes a repository of Riddle's darkest ambitions, a way for him to maintain a presence in the wizarding world, even as he is slowly fading into the shadows. It is a constant reminder that no matter what happens to his body, his soul will never truly die. In the books, the diary is also a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked power and the corrupting influence of dark magic. It is a tool of manipulation designed to prey on the weaknesses of others. Ginny, who is innocent and impressionable, falls prey to the diary's dark allure, just as many others throughout the wizarding world fall under the sway of Voldemort's influence. The diary's ability to manipulate the emotions and actions of its owner serves as a warning about the dangers of power when it is used for self-interest and domination. What makes the diary even more terrifying is that it is not easily destroyed. It is only through the intervention of Harry Potter, with the help of Fawkes the Phoenix and the sword of Godric Gryffindor, that the diary is finally destroyed. The basilisk venom, which has the power to kill, is used to penetrate the diary's defenses and destroy the piece of Riddle's soul within it. In this moment, the diary's power is broken, but its legacy lives on. The destruction of the diary is symbolic of the final defeat of Riddle's influence over Ginny, but it also marks a turning point in Harry's own journey as he begins to understand the true nature of the battle he is facing. The dark magic contained within the diary is a stark reminder of the dangers that lie in the pursuit of immortality. Riddle's creation of the diary is one of his earliest attempts to defy death, a goal that would consume him throughout his life and drive him to commit unspeakable acts. The diary represents his early attempts to preserve his soul, an effort that would eventually lead him to create the multiple Horcruxes that would define his path to ultimate power. In this way, the diary is not just a tool for manipulation, but also a symbol of Riddle's desperation to avoid the inevitable. It is a representation of his fear of death and his willingness to sacrifice anything, including his own humanity, to escape it. The true significance of the diary lies not just in its role in the Chamber of Secrets, but in the way it foreshadows the larger themes of the series. The diary serves as a precursor to the eventual reveal of Voldemort's Horcruxes, and its destruction sets the stage for Harry's quest to destroy the other pieces of Voldemort's soul. It is a crucial part of the story's larger narrative, one that highlights the power of dark magic and the lengths to which Voldemort will go to achieve his goals. The diary is, in many ways, the first key in a much larger puzzle, and its secrets are far more profound than what is presented in the films. The films, while capturing the immediate danger and suspense surrounding the diary, fail to fully convey its true power and significance. The books, however, take the time to delve into the darker aspects of the diary's creation and its role in Tom Riddle's descent into darkness. By understanding the diary's true nature, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex and chilling world of dark magic that J.K. Rowling has crafted. The diary is a symbol of Voldemort's legacy, a reminder that his influence extends far beyond the pages of history, lurking in the shadows and waiting to be rediscovered. Number 17. Hermione's Lost Memory. Hermione Granger's memory was always one of her most remarkable traits. Known for her diligence and keen intellect, she was the one who always had the answer, the one who read every book, who was prepared for anything. But in the midst of the chaotic battle against the dark forces of Voldemort, there existed a moment that even she couldn't control. A painful, irreversible decision that would forever alter her. This was the memory she lost. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Hermione faced a heart-wrenching choice that few could imagine. To protect her parents from the wrath of Voldemort, she had to erase herself from their lives. It was a decision that wasn't made lightly, and though it was never fully explored in the films, it is one of the most tragic and defining moments for her character. For someone whose life was so intertwined with her family, this loss was a form of devastation that went far beyond physical harm or injury. For the better part of the series, Hermione had been the glue holding the trio together. She was logical, determined, and constantly kept them on track. But beneath her composed exterior, she was also someone deeply connected to her family. She had always spoken fondly of her parents, who were dentists, of her life before Hogwarts. They were supportive, loving, and gave her the foundation from which she grew into the brilliant young witch she became. The idea of losing them, not just physically but emotionally, would have been unbearable. The decision was born out of necessity. Voldemort and his Death Eaters were hunting down those who stood against them, and Hermione's parents, like thousands of others, were in grave danger. In an instant, her world shifted. The same young witch who once had everything, family, love, security, now had to erase those precious memories from her parents' minds to keep them safe. To ensure that they were spared from the horrors of Voldemort's tyranny, she removed herself entirely from their lives, not just as a daughter, but as a memory in their minds. The book describes her pain vividly, though the films gloss over it. The memory of her parents, the happy moments, the laughter, all vanished in the blink of an eye. Hermione, ever the protector, carried this burden with quiet dignity, but it weighed on her deeply. She had taken away the very thing that had given her strength, her family's love and support. She no longer had the right to run to her parents when she felt vulnerable, to be comforted by their presence. There would be no more hugs from her mother, no more light-hearted chats with her father. They would be forever unaware of her existence. The decision was one of survival, but it was also a profound act of self-sacrifice. This was the point where Hermione's path diverged from the one she had always known. She became, in a way, a ghost in her own life. As she reflected on her decision later in the book, the emotional toll became clear. The loss of her parents' memories was not just an act of erasure, it was the severing of a vital connection to her past. And in doing so, it highlighted the stark contrast between her reality and the one she had fought so hard to protect. She was no longer the Hermione Granger who had shared everything with her family. She was now a girl haunted by the fact that her parents would never even know she had sacrificed her own happiness for their safety. This sacrifice, one of the ultimate personal costs in a war that had already claimed so many lives, would shape her character for the rest of her journey. The films, while capturing much of the external conflict and the epic nature of the story, largely glossed over this aspect of Hermione's character. In the book, this moment of vulnerability is revealed quietly, almost as an aside, and it is heartbreaking in its simplicity. The absence of this memory was not just a plot device, it was a revelation of the deeper emotional toll of the war. Hermione's selflessness was profound, but it came with the cost of losing her own identity in the process. The pain of the memory loss also rippled into her relationships with Harry and Ron. She had always been the one to shoulder the burden of knowledge and responsibility. Now she was carrying this secret, this painful memory, alone. Her connection to her parents, the people who had always been her grounding force, had been erased not by her enemies, but by her own hand. And while her friends, particularly Ron and Harry, were no strangers to the weight of personal loss, they could never truly understand the depth of her sacrifice. She would never be able to return home to find comfort or solace from her parents. And yet she pressed on, ever the warrior, fighting for a future she could no longer share with the people who meant the most to her. The loss of her parents' memories wasn't just a minor plot point. It was a theme that explored the price of war and the sacrifices made by those who fought in it. Hermione's loss was not one of physical harm or death, but one of an emotional severance that was irreversible. Her parents, who had always been there for her, would never know that their daughter had risked everything to protect them. This tragic disconnect added a layer of complexity to her character. Hermione was no longer simply a determined, logical friend. She was a young woman who had been forced to face the unimaginable, the erasure of everything she had ever known. In her interactions with Harry and Ron, this hidden burden began to manifest. Although she continued to be the voice of reason and the one who guided them through their mission, A part of her had been irrevocably lost. The strong, brave Hermione that everyone knew was still there, but beneath the surface she was grieving a profound loss, one that was entirely invisible to those around her. This emotional weight made her even more admirable, but it also made her more human. As the trio ventured further into their quest to destroy the Horcruxes and defeat Voldemort, Hermione's personal sacrifices became more evident. It wasn't just the loss of her parents' memories that haunted her. It was the fact that she could never explain to them why she had done it, why she had chosen to erase herself from their lives to protect them. That secrecy added a quiet sorrow to her character, a reminder of the price that had to be paid for the greater good. Hermione's story then became not just one of bravery, but one of deep personal sacrifice. Her decision to erase her parents' memories was not just a tactical move in the fight against Voldemort, it was an emotional and psychological wound that she carried with her. She was forced to face the brutal reality of war, that sometimes the cost of victory was more than anyone could bear. The omission of this moment in the films was a lost opportunity to explore the depths of Hermione's character. Her decision to erase her parents from her memory wasn't just about protecting them. It was about the painful recognition that in the end she would be alone. Her family would never know the true extent of her sacrifice, and she would carry the weight of that knowledge until the very end. In her story, the loss was far more than just an erasure of memory. It was the erasure of the very thing that made her human, the love and connection to her family. Number 18, the magic of Sirius's tears. When Sirius Black dies in the 5th book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the event shakes Harry to his core, far more than any loss he's experienced before. His death is not just a loss of a loved one, but a loss tied deeply to the very fabric of Harry's identity. In the films, the death of Sirius is portrayed as a moment of heart-wrenching tragedy, but the films miss a crucial aspect that Rowling carefully wove into the narrative: the magical repercussions of Sirius's death. It is not only Harry's heart that suffers, but also his very being, as his emotions and magic become inseparably linked in this moment. Harry had always known love and loss in abstract terms, but nothing could prepare him for the impact of losing Sirius. For the first time, Harry experiences a true familial bond, one that he had been robbed of for most of his life. Sirius became a father figure, the last living link to his parents. It was the only real familial love Harry had known since the death of his parents. To lose him so abruptly, so violently, and so without warning was a shattering experience for Harry. But Rowling shows us that this loss leaves more than just an emotional void. It leaves a magical imprint, a connection between Harry and Sirius that transcends the physical death. After Sirius's death, Harry feels a strange, almost unnatural pull toward him. He senses something beyond grief, a ripple in the magical world that seems to draw on his very soul. The connection to Sirius does not simply vanish with his death, as most would expect. Instead, Harry begins to feel a presence, Sirius's soul perhaps, or some fragment of him that lingers within the boy. This magic is subtle but profound. The bond between Harry and Sirius was already extraordinary, marked by a shared history and intertwined destinies. In a sense, their fates were forever linked when Harry was a child, and now, even in death, that link has not been severed. The idea of a magical presence, a lingering soul that doesn't quite let go, is important. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry experiences this sense of Sirius's presence when he is in moments of extreme emotional distress. The most striking instance is after his death, when Harry feels this overwhelming sensation that Sirius has not truly left him. In his dreams, Harry often believes he sees Sirius reaching out to him, trying to give him guidance, comfort, or even a sense of closure. This isn't just Harry's mind playing tricks on him. This is magic at work. Rowling carefully constructs a world where magic is not simply a tool, but something intimately connected to the emotions, the souls, and the very essence of the people in her universe. Harry's magic has always been a reflection of his inner turmoil and heartache, so it stands to reason that the loss of Sirius would provoke a magical reaction. In the book, this is highlighted during moments where Harry's grief seems to merge with his magic. It is not just Harry's heart that breaks, but his very connection to the magical world is fractured and altered by Sirius's death. Magic in this world reacts to the deepest emotions, and Sirius's death affects Harry's ability to control it, even more so as he continues his journey against Voldemort. The film adaptations, however, chose to strip this aspect of the story away. In the film, Harry's grief over Sirius's death is visible, but it is primarily shown in emotional reactions, like his cry as he stares at the veil, his powerless fury after losing him, and the somber moments that follow. But the films do not touch on the deeper magical consequences. There is no mention of Harry's magical connection to Sirius posthumously. His grief is presented as raw emotion, but its magical counterpart, the sensation that his soul and Sirius's remain connected through the currents of magic, is completely omitted. In doing so, the film misses a significant part of the magic that Rowling imbued into her narrative. This magical connection that Harry experiences becomes even more significant as he continues to face Voldemort. Through his journey, Harry grows in both emotional and magical ways, and Sirius's death plays a central role in that transformation. The lingering presence Harry feels from Sirius is not just comforting, it is a powerful reminder of the importance of love, sacrifice, and loss in the battle against Voldemort. Sirius's death marks a turning point in Harry's life, a moment that forces him to confront the reality that the people he loves can be taken from him at any moment, but it also demonstrates the resilience of magic, how it continues to bind people together even after they are gone. The magical residue left behind by Sirius's death manifests in many ways, some subtle, some obvious. Harry's connection to Sirius leads to moments of extraordinary insight, guidance, and inner strength that aid him throughout his continued battle against Voldemort. It is as though Sirius's love and his sacrifices live on through Harry's own actions. Magic is not simply a tool that Harry wields, it is a reflection of who he is, what he feels, and what he carries inside him. By allowing the magic to reflect the grief and love that Harry feels after Sirius's death, Rowling deepens the emotional resonance of this loss, turning it into a potent force that pushes Harry forward. The death of Sirius also has a profound effect on Harry's relationship with his other mentors. With Sirius gone, Harry feels more isolated than ever. He begins to realize that the fight against Voldemort is not something that can be won through mere magical ability or strength alone, but through love, loyalty, and sacrifice. These values were demonstrated by Sirius, and now Harry must carry them forward without his godfather's presence to guide him. This is a crucial part of Harry's development as a hero. The presence he feels from Sirius in the aftermath of his death pushes Harry to understand that love is not just a feeling, but a form of magic that can transcend even the bounds of life and death. It becomes Harry's greatest weapon. While the films acknowledge Harry's grief, they fail to delve into the metaphysical implications of his loss. The magical presence of Sirius is, in a way, a form of continued mentorship for Harry, guiding him in ways that are less tangible but no less important. The films focus solely on Harry's emotional journey with little regard for the magical depth of his experiences. There is no exploration of how Harry's magic is influenced by his emotions, and how, in this moment of great loss, his power is shaped by the love and memories of his godfather. The magical consequences of Sirius's death are left unexplored, leaving a gap in the portrayal of Harry's emotional and magical growth. This omission from the films is particularly noticeable when contrasted with other key magical moments in the books, for instance when Harry faces the prophecy in The Half-Blood Prince, or when he learns about his connection to Voldemort. The films focus on the importance of these revelations in a very literal sense. The magic that exists between Harry and Sirius, however, is far more nuanced, woven into the very essence of Harry's being, and thus requires more than a simple explanation. It is a magic that cannot be captured in one scene or one dramatic moment. Instead, it is something that subtly shifts the course of Harry's destiny and the way he views his own role in the battle against Voldemort. Sirius's death is far more than a tragic moment in Harry's life. It is a transformative event in his magical journey. The films might have shown us Harry's tears, his rage, and his sorrow, but they miss the deep magic that arose from that sorrow. The death of Sirius in the books is not just the end of one of Harry's closest allies, but the beginning of a magical transformation that aids him in his ultimate defeat of Voldemort. It is a magic that exists beyond death, a magic that connects Harry to the very essence of what he's fighting for: love, loyalty, and the unwavering courage to carry on in the face of overwhelming darkness. Number 19, Dumbledore's Collection. The secrets surrounding Harry Potter and his friends' journey often lead them to the great Dumbledore for guidance. Yet there is an area of his life that remains shrouded in mystery: his vast collection of magical artifacts and spells. This hidden aspect of Dumbledore's life is far more than a mere footnote in the story. It is an integral part of his legacy, playing a pivotal role in the ultimate defeat of Voldemort. While much of his wisdom and teachings are shared with Harry and others, very little is said about the collection of objects Dumbledore amassed over the years, many of which were connected to the darkest parts of wizarding history. What the films skim over is the depth and significance of these magical artifacts, most notably the cursed ring that would later play a key role in Voldemort's own soul. One of the most significant pieces in Dumbledore's collection was the Resurrection Stone, which was hidden within the Gaunt Ring, one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. This stone, which held the power to summon the dead, had an incredibly deep, personal connection to Dumbledore's past. His mother, Kendra, and his sister, Ariana, had died under tragic circumstances, leaving a heavy burden of guilt on young Albus. Dumbledore's obsession with the Resurrection Stone was a reflection of his own inability to let go of the past and his desire to right the wrongs he had committed. However, the stone's power to bring back the dead was not a gift, but a curse. It was this stone that ultimately contributed to Dumbledore's own demise when he was unable to resist the temptation to use it to see his loved ones once more, only to realize too late that the dead could not truly return. But the Resurrection Stone was just the tip of the iceberg. Dumbledore's collection was vast and filled with objects of unimaginable power. Some were relics of ancient times, others were more recent, but all of them held the potential to alter the course of magical history. The films touched briefly on the significance of these items, but there was so much more to them than what was shown on the screen. The Half-Blood Prince, for instance, was not merely a book that provided Harry with potions knowledge. It was a window into the darker side of magic that Dumbledore had studied extensively. The book had once belonged to a mysterious and dangerous figure, and it was through his interactions with it that Dumbledore uncovered many secrets that he would later pass on to Harry. Dumbledore was not just a collector of powerful magical objects for the sake of acquisition. Each item had a purpose, and each was part of his larger strategy to defeat Voldemort. The Elder Wand, one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, was another piece that Dumbledore took into his possession. The wand's history was as tangled as the story of its creators, and it was said to be unbeatable in the hands of its rightful master. The wand was both a weapon and a tool in Dumbledore's fight against Voldemort, and it became central to the final battle between the forces of good and evil. What was never fully revealed in the films was how Dumbledore's understanding of the wand was deeply tied to his understanding of power and death itself. He knew the wand's power, but he also knew that possessing it came with grave consequences. It was a constant reminder of the choices that Dumbledore had made and the sacrifices that would have to be made to defeat the Dark Lord. The importance of Dumbledore's collection went far beyond mere practical use. Each object was a piece of the puzzle, a clue to understanding the deeper truths about Voldemort and his rise to power. The Horcruxes and their significance were only fully realized as Harry and his friends embarked on their journey. Dumbledore had been tracking these dark objects for years, carefully keeping track of Voldemort's every move, though not without personal sacrifice. The films portrayed him as a wise mentor, but they did not delve deeply into the personal cost of his involvement with such dark magic. Dumbledore's pursuit of the Horcruxes was not a quest for glory or power. It was an act of necessity, driven by the need to destroy Voldemort at any cost, even if it meant confronting the very essence of evil that lay within these objects. What the films failed to explore in depth was Dumbledore's understanding of the risks that came with collecting such dangerous artifacts. The Gaunt Ring, which had once belonged to Voldemort's maternal family, was one such item that came with disastrous consequences. Dumbledore, in his search for answers, put his own life in jeopardy by touching the cursed object. The ring was imbued with a curse that slowly began to poison Dumbledore, and it was this curse that would ultimately lead to his death. The films only gave a brief glimpse into this moment, showing Dumbledore's pain and the urgency with which he sought to break the curse. But in the books it was clear that Dumbledore knew the risks and had accepted them. His determination to destroy Voldemort's Horcruxes was so powerful that he was willing to sacrifice his own life, knowing that the battle could not be won without such personal cost. But there was another layer to Dumbledore's collection, his knowledge of the Deathly Hallows. The 3 Hallows, the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak, were linked by a single story, one that Dumbledore had long been fascinated with. The tale of the 3 brothers who were granted these gifts by Death himself was more than a simple fable to Dumbledore. It was a key to understanding Voldemort's obsession with power and immortality. Dumbledore believed that the Hallows were not just magical objects, but symbols of a larger cosmic balance. The Elder Wand represented mastery over death, the Resurrection Stone was a reflection of the desire to bring the dead back to life, and the Invisibility Cloak was the ability to escape from the grasp of death. Each Hallow embodied a different aspect of human desire, and Dumbledore's understanding of their power gave him the insight to help Harry in his final battle against Voldemort. In the films, the Deathly Hallows are introduced as key elements of the plot, but they are not fully explored. The significance of Dumbledore's connection to the Hallows is only hinted at, but it was a theme that ran deep throughout the series. The Deathly Hallows were not just magical objects, they represented the complex relationship between life, death, and the choices that define us. Dumbledore's collection of magical objects, including the Hallows, was part of his larger understanding of these themes, and it was through his wisdom and the guidance he offered Harry that the true power of these items was revealed. Dumbledore's collection of magical artifacts was also a reflection of his own internal struggle. He was not a perfect man, and his past was filled with mistakes and regrets. His relationship with Grindelwald, the dark wizard he had once befriended, was a major part of his personal journey. The two had shared a vision of creating a better world, but their differences led them down separate paths. Dumbledore's guilt over his role in Grindelwald's rise to power was something that haunted him for much of his life. The collection of objects, including the Elder Wand, was part of his effort to atone for his past mistakes. Each item, each magical object, was a way for Dumbledore to make amends for the choices he had made in his youth, and it was his understanding of the dangers of these objects that led him to make the ultimate sacrifice. In the end, Dumbledore's collection of magical artifacts and his deep understanding of their power were crucial to the defeat of Voldemort. The artifacts themselves were not the key to Voldemort's defeat. It was Dumbledore's wisdom, his ability to see the bigger picture, and his willingness to sacrifice himself that allowed Harry to fulfill his destiny. Dumbledore's collection was a testament to his knowledge and his commitment to defeating the Dark Lord, but it was his heart and his choices that truly made him the greatest wizard of his time. While the films may have glossed over the significance of Dumbledore's collection, the books made it clear that these magical objects were integral to the ultimate victory over evil. Number 20. What happened to Fred? Fred Weasley's death in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is one of the most devastating moments in the final book of J.K. Rowling's saga. For many fans, this tragedy is merely a sad, fleeting moment. In the film adaptation, Fred's death is glossed over quickly, almost as if it were just another casualty of war. However, within the pages of the book, Fred's death carries far more weight, especially considering the profound impact it has on his twin brother George and the Weasley family as a whole. The deeper emotional and psychological consequences of Fred's passing, largely omitted from the film, offer a more tragic and complex narrative that emphasizes the bond between the twins and the resulting vacuum left in George's life. Fred and George were inseparable, not only as brothers, but as business partners. Together, they ran Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, their joke shop that had quickly become a success in Diagon Alley. Their partnership was built on shared dreams, pranks, and a deep understanding of each other. Their personalities were so intertwined that they almost seemed like one person. Fred was the more extroverted of the two, often the one to take charge of the larger pranks and lead their mischievous endeavors. George, while equally clever and creative, was often the more reserved and pragmatic of the pair. Their business was their shared creation, and their success was largely due to their perfect synergy. The death of Fred, then, isn't just a loss of a sibling, it's the loss of an integral part of George's identity. In the books, George's grief is palpable, yet it is not something that can be simply described in words. It is an ongoing internal battle. Fred was more than just a twin. He was George's closest friend, his co-conspirator, and his rock. They had created something together, and now George must face the reality of continuing it without the other half of his soul. The grief George experiences goes far beyond the sorrow of losing a sibling. It is a loss that challenges his very sense of self. One of the most poignant aspects of George's mourning is the impact it has on Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. After Fred's death, George tries to carry on the business alone, but it's clear from the very beginning that something is missing. The shop, once vibrant with the energy and humor of the twins, loses its charm without Fred. George's heart simply isn't in it anymore. He continues to run the business, but it is now an empty, lifeless endeavor. The joke shop that was once a symbol of their joint achievement becomes a mere reminder of what has been lost. George's internal conflict is made more difficult by the fact that he cannot simply walk away from it. Fred's legacy is built into every corner of the shop, and George feels an overwhelming responsibility to maintain it in his brother's honor, even as the joy that once filled it is gone. In the books, George's struggle with his grief is also reflected in his physical appearance and demeanor. He becomes quieter, more reserved. The once lively and playful George, who had always been quick to joke and laugh, becomes more somber and introspective. His struggle is not just emotional, but psychological. He is forced to reconcile with the reality that Fred, his closest companion, is never coming back. This grief manifests itself in many ways, particularly in George's struggle with the idea of moving forward without Fred by his side, even in the midst of the war and the battle for survival. George is consumed by a sense of profound loss. This battle for George isn't just a fight against Voldemort's forces, it is a fight against his own sorrow and the overwhelming loneliness that comes with the death of his twin. In the aftermath of the Battle of Hogwarts, George's grief is intensified when he is seen trying to come to terms with Fred's death in the most private of ways. One of the most heart-wrenching moments in the books is when George is alone, grieving quietly, and then pulling himself together to be strong for the rest of his family. His outward appearance of strength and stoicism is a facade, a way to protect his family from the pain he feels. This internalized grief is heartbreaking because George is unable to express the depth of his sorrow in any meaningful way. He feels the weight of his loss not just as a personal tragedy, but as a familial one. The entire Weasley family mourns, but it is clear that George's loss is more intimate and devastating than anyone else's. The loss of Fred also fundamentally alters the family dynamics within the Weasley household. While the Weasleys have always been a tightly knit family, Fred's death throws everything into disarray. The bond between the twins was one of the strongest in the family, and Fred's absence leaves a void that cannot be filled. The Weasley family, which had always relied on its sense of togetherness and humor, now finds itself grappling with a deep, painful silence. Molly and Arthur, Fred's parents, are devastated, but they are also forced to watch their surviving son suffer in ways they cannot help him overcome. The quiet grief that consumes George is felt by the entire family, but it is particularly intense for his mother, Molly. In the midst of all this loss, it is George's struggle that stands out. Despite his deep sorrow, George does eventually begin to heal, albeit slowly. The road to recovery is a long one, and George's journey is not one of immediate triumph. He cannot simply replace the hole in his heart left by Fred's death. However, in the end, George finds a way to move forward, not by forgetting Fred, but by honoring his memory. He continues to run Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, but it is no longer just a business for him. It becomes a way to keep Fred's spirit alive. The shop remains a testament to their shared dreams, and by keeping it running, George is able to feel a connection to his twin that transcends death. In the years that follow, George becomes an example of resilience. He marries Angelina Johnson, and together they start a family. Though Fred's absence will always be felt, George learns to navigate his grief and find new joy in life. This eventual healing is a testament to the enduring power of love and the strength that George derives from his memories of Fred. In conclusion, Fred's death is not just a tragic event in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. It is a defining moment for George, and his struggle with that loss is far more complex than what is portrayed in the films. The books give us a deeper insight into George's emotional and psychological journey, highlighting how this loss shapes him as an individual. The bond between the twins, so central to the series, is forever altered, and it is only through immense personal growth and resilience that George is able to come to terms with Fred's death. The impact of Fred's loss ripples throughout the Weasley family, but it is George who is left to pick up the pieces and carry on their shared legacy, even as he continues to mourn the twin who was his other half. Number 21. The Secret Life of Neville Longbottom. Neville Longbottom's story is one that often goes unnoticed in the grand narrative of Harry Potter. While the films focus on the exploits of Harry, Hermione, and Ron, Neville's journey is one of immense transformation, one that deserves more recognition. In the books, Neville is introduced as an awkward, shy, and often clumsy boy, unsure of himself and constantly overshadowed by his more famous peers. However, as the story progresses, Neville becomes one of the key figures in the battle against Voldemort, a hero in his own right, whose courage and strength emerge only after a long and often painful process of self-discovery. His development, particularly in terms of his internal struggles and eventual triumph, is far more nuanced and inspiring than the brief moments given to him in the films. At the beginning of the series, Neville is portrayed as an underdog. He is far from the valiant figure he later becomes. The first year at Hogwarts presents him as a character who struggles with self-confidence and is prone to accidents and mishaps. His fear of standing out in front of his classmates is palpable, and his self-doubt constantly holds him back. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Neville's awkwardness is highlighted when he forgets the passwords to Gryffindor Tower, a simple mistake that showcases his insecurity. The other students, particularly Draco Malfoy, take advantage of his weaknesses, and Neville remains on the fringes of the main group, never quite able to keep up with the dazzling personalities of Harry and Hermione. Neville's struggle with self-worth is a recurring theme throughout the books. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, he is still trying to find his place in the wizarding world. He is not particularly skilled at magic, often the last to master spells, and his classmates make it clear that he is not as talented as the others. Even his attempts at bravery, like when he joins Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the confrontation with the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, seem out of place. Though Neville's heart is in the right place, his actions are more out of a desire to belong than an innate sense of heroism. It's clear that Neville is far from the hero we will come to recognize. But as the series unfolds, Neville begins to change. His transformation begins to take shape in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where we first see a shift in his character. He starts to show more resolve and determination, especially in his attempts to learn magic and prove himself to others. When he finally succeeds in learning the levitation charm and earns the praise of his classmates, it's a small but significant victory for Neville. For the first time, he begins to realize that he is capable of more than he thought. This spark of self-belief, though still small, is the foundation for the hero that he will become. By the time Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire rolls around, Neville is no longer the nervous, unsure boy we once knew. His character has evolved into someone far more self-assured, though still not without his insecurities. The Triwizard Tournament, while mostly focused on Harry, serves as an important moment for Neville's growth. He volunteers to fight in the first task when others might have hesitated, and his bravery in the face of danger becomes evident. This new Neville is starting to emerge, though the films, unfortunately, overlook the subtleties of this transition. In the books, Neville is becoming a young man who recognizes his strengths and is willing to take risks to protect those he cares about. The pivotal moment of Neville's development comes in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It's here that we begin to see the true extent of his transformation. When he becomes one of the members of Dumbledore's army, Neville not only demonstrates courage but also leadership. He becomes someone his classmates can rely on, not because he's the most talented, but because he has the determination to fight for what's right. His struggles with his family, particularly his parents, who were tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange, also add a layer of depth to his character. Neville's personal history and the weight of his family's legacy shape his drive to make a difference. His internal battle between fear and courage becomes the central theme of his character's growth. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Neville's resilience continues to grow. He is no longer just a member of the DA, but a fighter in the war against Voldemort's forces. He is involved in the battle at the Ministry of Magic and contributes to the fight in ways that were unimaginable when we first met him. Neville's internal struggle, however, does not disappear. He continues to grapple with the loss of his parents, the pressure to live up to the legacy of his family, and his self-doubt. But instead of allowing these obstacles to defeat him, Neville finds strength in his pain. He learns to use his vulnerabilities as a source of power, transforming his weakness into resilience. The climax of Neville's character arc comes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. It is in this final book that Neville fully steps into his role as a hero. In the films, his actions are rushed. A quick scene of him destroying Nagini, Voldemort's final Horcrux, often overshadowed by the more prominent characters. But in the books, this moment is much more significant. Neville's journey to this moment is years in the making. He has spent the entire series slowly coming into his own, shedding his self-doubt and embracing his bravery. When he kills Nagini, it is not just an act of violence, but the culmination of everything he has learned. The boy who was once seen as a clumsy, forgetful student has become the man who delivers the final blow in the war against Voldemort. Neville's role in the destruction of Nagini is a profound moment of self-realization. For him, it is not just about the physical act of killing a dangerous creature, but the symbolic destruction of his own insecurities. Nagini, as a Horcrux, represents Voldemort's power and control, and by eliminating her, Neville also symbolizes his own personal victory over the fears and limitations that have held him back. This is a far cry from the insecure boy we first met in Philosopher's Stone, and it underscores the remarkable transformation Neville has undergone. He is no longer a side character, he is an essential player in the fight for good. But Neville's story doesn't end with the final battle. In the aftermath, Neville's journey of growth continues. He becomes the herbology professor at Hogwarts, fulfilling the legacy of his beloved teacher, Professor Sprout. He has not only overcome his insecurities, but has also become a figure of authority and respect. His story represents the power of perseverance, growth, and self-acceptance. He is a symbol of how ordinary people, when given the chance to grow, can become extraordinary. His character's arc is a testament to the idea that even the most underestimated individuals can become heroes, not through innate talent, but through hard work, bravery, and a belief in themselves. Neville's story is, at its core, a story of hope. It reminds us that heroes are not born, but made through the choices they make and the courage they find within themselves. While Harry's journey may have been the focal point of the series, Neville's is just as significant. His growth, though more understated, is a crucial part of the battle against Voldemort, and serves as an important reminder that bravery comes in many forms. Whether it's standing up to bullies, fighting for what's right, or simply learning to believe in oneself, Neville Longbottom's story is one of quiet but undeniable heroism. Number 22, The Mystery of the Resurrection Ritual. When Voldemort returns to life in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the event is nothing short of shocking. The ground trembles, the air crackles, and the dark figure of the Dark Lord rises once more. The movie presents this moment as a terrifying spectacle, but it barely scratches the surface of the true depth of the magical ritual behind his resurrection. The ritual that Voldemort uses to regain his body and powers is far more intricate and ominous than what is revealed in the films. In J.K. Rowling's books, the ritual of return is imbued with ancient magic, bound by blood, fate, and the consequences of power too great to fully understand. What the films overlook is the profound link that this ritual creates between Harry and Voldemort, one that transcends mere chance or circumstance. In the book, the ritual is laid out in chilling detail. It requires not only the blood of Harry Potter, but also the flesh of a servant and the bone of Voldemort's father, ingredients that are crucial to Voldemort's survival. It is a dark and twisted piece of magic, one that promises not just resurrection, but the enhancement of Voldemort's power, a power so potent that it threatens the very fabric of life itself. But it's not just about reviving a dark wizard. The blood connection between Harry and Voldemort is the heart of the ritual. Blood in the wizarding world is a powerful symbol, one that binds lives and fates together in a way that no other force can. By using Harry's blood, Voldemort ties their destinies inextricably together, creating a magical bond that neither of them fully understands or can break. This is where the ritual takes on a far more dangerous aspect. In the process of his return, Voldemort becomes more than just a mere shadow of his former self. His use of Harry's blood, a blood connection he is forced to maintain, makes him stronger. The ritual not only restores his body, but empowers him with a new form, making him less vulnerable than before. But the cost is high. Voldemort's link to Harry creates a strange, unbreakable tether between them. No longer is Voldemort free to act without consequence. The connection to Harry ensures that every time they cross paths, the magical bond between them grows stronger, more dangerous. In the Goblet of Fire, this blood connection is only hinted at in the films. The movie makes it clear that Voldemort is using Harry's blood to regain his body, but it does not delve into the intricacies of how this magic ties them together. The novel, however, goes deeper, offering a vivid portrayal of how the connection between them becomes a force that neither can escape. Voldemort's attempt to kill Harry in the graveyard is just one example of the ritual's far-reaching consequences. Harry is not merely a victim, he is an integral part of Voldemort's rebirth. The very act of using Harry's blood strengthens Voldemort's power, but also fortifies Harry's resistance. Each encounter between them is not just a confrontation between good and evil, but a clash between two intertwined fates. This bond between Harry and Voldemort is more than a mystical quirk. It's a catalyst for the events that follow. The ritual doesn't simply give Voldemort power, it gives him access to a dangerous, unholy form of immortality. The connection forged through Harry's blood means that Voldemort cannot harm Harry in a permanent way. The final battle at the Ministry of Magic later in the series reveals the deeper implications of this bond. When Voldemort tries to strike Harry down with the killing curse, the spell rebounds on him, not because of Harry's inherent magical ability, but because of the bond that links their souls. Their fates are forever bound, and the blood ritual ensures that neither can truly destroy the other. The complexity of this bond is first revealed during the Priori Incantatem effect, the moment when Harry and Voldemort's wands connect in the Goblet of Fire. The clash between their wands creates a burst of light, and the ghostly shadows of Voldemort's victims appear, offering Harry a glimpse into the past. These figures, like Cedric Diggory, who died in the same moment, symbolize the lives Voldemort has taken. But what is most revealing is the way that Harry and Voldemort's connection allows their magic to briefly overlap. This moment is pivotal as it shows how the blood bond affects their variabilities. Harry is able to summon the spirits of Voldemort's past victims, an event that suggests his deep connection to Voldemort's magic. In the novels, this magic is a thread that runs through their encounters, growing stronger with each confrontation. The bond means that Voldemort cannot kill Harry not just because of Harry's own magical prowess, but because their fates are now intertwined. This connection is cemented in the final confrontation in Deathly Hallows, when Harry willingly offers himself to Voldemort in an attempt to stop the Dark Lord once and for all. Harry's willingness to sacrifice himself, as Voldemort prepares to kill him, highlights the deep sense of fate that governs their relationship. The ritual of return, which tied their lives together, allows Harry to survive Voldemort's curse once again, breaking the cycle of death and rebirth. Voldemort's failure to kill Harry permanently is not due to Harry's physical strength, but because of the ritual's unforeseen consequences. As the series progresses, we see the growing complexity of their bond. The connection between Harry and Voldemort becomes a central theme, one that shapes the course of the entire series. Voldemort's failure to kill Harry in the Goblet of Fire is not simply a moment of defeat, it is the beginning of his unraveling. The bond that Voldemort created through the ritual of return becomes the very thing that ultimately brings about his downfall. His obsession with power and control blinds him to the magic that ties him to Harry, and in his arrogance he underestimates the power of their shared connection. By using Harry's blood, Voldemort inadvertently ensures his own defeat, as the magic that binds them together becomes a force for Harry's survival. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, we see more of the implications of the bond when Harry is able to access Voldemort's thoughts through his connection to the Dark Lord's soul. This ability to see into Voldemort's mind is a direct result of the blood bond formed during the ritual. While Voldemort seeks to control Harry through fear, the connection between them allows Harry to learn and adapt. This moment underscores the idea that Harry's ability to resist Voldemort is not simply a matter of strength or will. It is a result of the magical connection they share, one that makes Harry a constant thorn in Voldemort's side. Every step Voldemort takes to harm Harry only strengthens the bond between them, until Harry becomes the one person who can ultimately defeat him. The ultimate revelation comes in the Deathly Hallows, when Harry learns that he himself must die in order to break the bond. The final confrontation between Harry and Voldemort, which culminates in Harry's willingness to sacrifice himself, is the final act of the ritual of return. The blood connection that once empowered Voldemort ultimately gives Harry the strength to defeat him. The ritual that Voldemort thought would grant him immortality becomes the very thing that leads to his destruction. The irony is that Voldemort's thirst for power and immortality, combined with his underestimation of the magical forces at play, leads to his downfall. In trying to defeat death, Voldemort seals his own fate, and in doing so he proves the power of love, sacrifice, and the bond that was created that fateful night in the graveyard. In the end, the ritual of return is not just about Voldemort's resurrection. It is about the interwoven destinies of two people who are connected in a way that neither of them fully understands. The blood bond that Voldemort forges ensures that their fates are tied together, and it is this bond that ultimately leads to Voldemort's defeat. What the films fail to convey is the true power of this connection, and how it is both the source of Voldemort's power and his ultimate weakness. The ritual may have revived him, but it is the magic of love and sacrifice embodied by Harry that will forever be Voldemort's undoing. Number 23. Legilimency. The magic of the mind. The magical world of Harry Potter is filled with enchanting spells, from the light-hearted charms to the dark curses that can change the course of lives. But one of the most intriguing and mysterious forms of magic in this world is legilimency, the magical art of reading minds. While the films offer a glimpse of this complex magic, particularly through the scenes where Severus Snape uses it on Harry Potter, the depth and nature of legilimency as depicted in the books reveal far more than just a simple tool for uncovering thoughts. It is a powerful skill that can not only read minds, but manipulate the very consciousness of another person. In the Harry Potter series, legilimency serves as an essential part of the narrative, especially in the context of the battle between Harry and Lord Voldemort. The Dark Lord and his followers, the Death Eaters, are masters of this craft, using it not just to probe minds, but to control and deceive their enemies. The film adaptations provide a limited view of this spell's potential, particularly in the iconic scene where Snape, Harry's potions professor, forcibly invades Harry's mind. But what the movies don't reveal is the complexity and the emotional turmoil that legilimency brings, especially when used for the purposes of manipulation and control. One of the most notable instances where legilimency becomes central to the plot is in the relationship between Harry and Snape. Harry, who is constantly at odds with his professor, doesn't initially understand the full scope of what legilimency can do. When Snape begins training him in this skill, Harry's own struggle to protect his thoughts becomes a battle not just of magic, but of willpower. Snape teaches Harry that in order to defend himself from Voldemort's intrusive presence in his mind, he must learn to close his thoughts off, to build mental barriers that are impenetrable to even the most skilled legilimens. This training process is not an easy one. It requires immense concentration and emotional control. Harry's mind, often a battleground for his own fears and desires, is a challenge for him to guard against the invasive power of legilimency. Snape, cold and distant as ever, pushes Harry to his limits, emphasizing the importance of discipline in mastering this skill. Harry's resistance, which is not just to Snape's harsh methods, but also to the very idea of someone delving so deeply into his psyche, mirrors his broader emotional journey. As he learns, he gains insight into himself. He begins to confront his inner turmoil, his rage, his sorrow, and his fear. Through legilimency, he gains an understanding of how the mind can be shaped, twisted, and controlled, just as Voldemort manipulates his followers. This psychological aspect of legilimency is one of its most chilling elements. While it is portrayed as a simple way of reading thoughts, its true power lies in its ability to influence emotions and memories. In a world where the line between good and evil is constantly in flux, legilimency becomes a tool for manipulation used by those like Voldemort and Snape to alter perceptions, to make someone question their own thoughts, or to cloud their judgment. The manipulation of the mind is something far more insidious than any physical curse. It affects the very core of one's being, undermining trust and personal integrity. The fact that Harry is forced to learn legilimency in order to protect himself from the Dark Lord makes this theme all the more significant. Harry's journey toward mastering this magic is not just about preventing Voldemort from taking over his mind. It is about understanding the darker aspects of his own psyche. Throughout the series, Harry is often depicted as a hero who must face external threats, but he is forced to confront the internal battle within himself. The emotional strain that comes with learning legilimency reflects the pressures Harry faces in his ongoing war against Voldemort and the ever-present danger of losing control over his own thoughts. One of the most poignant aspects of legilimency is its relationship with memory. It is not just about what one thinks, but what one remembers and how those memories are shaped. Voldemort, as the ultimate practitioner of this craft, uses legilimency to access and distort the memories of his enemies. In the case of Severus Snape, who is also a master of legilimency, it is his ability to hide his true feelings and memories from the Dark Lord that proves crucial to his double life. The fact that Snape, a man constantly torn between loyalty to his past and his love for Lily Potter, can conceal such powerful emotions and memories highlights just how vital control over one's thoughts and memories is in the magical world. Harry, for his part, struggles with the weight of his memories throughout the series. His connection to Voldemort, which is partly formed through legilimency, forces Harry to experience his memories in a way that goes beyond mere recollection. It is as though Voldemort has the power to reach into Harry's past and twist it, making him question everything he has ever known. The emotional cost of this is immense, as Harry often finds himself questioning the validity of his own experiences. Legilimency in this sense becomes a mirror reflecting not just the present but the past and the potential future. Throughout the books, Snape's role in Harry's education in legilimency is a subtle yet critical one. His insistence on discipline and control in the face of Harry's vulnerability represents a larger theme of the series: how difficult it is to maintain control over one's emotions and thoughts in the face of overwhelming fear and danger. Snape, despite his cold demeanor, plays a pivotal role in helping Harry understand the complex nature of the Dark Lord's power. Through legilimency, Snape demonstrates that Voldemort's strength lies not just in his ability to overpower others physically, but in his capacity to control and manipulate minds. The intricacies of legilimency also serve to highlight the vulnerability of the characters. Despite their magical abilities, characters like Harry, Snape, and even Voldemort are ultimately at the mercy of their minds. Their inner fears, desires, and regrets are exposed through this magic, making them more human than they might seem. Even Voldemort, whose mastery of legilimency allows him to manipulate others with ease, is not immune to the vulnerability it creates. His overconfidence in his control over others blinds him to the fact that his own mind is a cage, locked away from true emotional connection and any semblance of empathy. While legilimency is often associated with dark magic, particularly in the hands of Voldemort and his followers, it also plays a crucial role in the development of Harry's character. Through his experiences with legilimency, Harry not only learns how to defend himself, but also how to understand others. He begins to grasp the complexities of human emotion, both his own and others, which enhances his ability to empathize and connect with those around him. It is through his mastery of this magical art that Harry becomes a more complete and self-aware individual. One of the most subtle aspects of legilimency is its role in defining personal boundaries. As Harry learns from Snape, legilimency is not just about defending against external intrusion, it is about learning how to protect one's own thoughts and emotions from being manipulated. The lessons Harry learns through legilimency reinforce the importance of maintaining one's inner sanctum, of keeping control over what is most personal and sacred. This idea of personal boundaries is something that resonates deeply throughout the series, as characters like Harry struggle to maintain their integrity in the face of overwhelming external pressures. In conclusion, legilimency in the Harry Potter series is far more than just a spell that reads minds. It is a powerful, invasive force that explores the complexities of thought, memory, and emotion. It is a tool used by both heroes and villains alike, representing the struggle for control over the self and the manipulation of others. Through his experiences with legilimency, Harry Potter learns not only how to defend himself against the Dark Lord, but also how to understand himself and those around him. The power of the mind and the struggle to control it is at the heart of this magical art, making it one of the most fascinating and significant aspects of the Harry Potter universe. Number 24. The silence of magical lore. In the world of Harry Potter, much of the intrigue lies not just in the magical adventures, but in the darker undercurrents of political maneuvering and corruption within the Ministry of Magic. In the films, we often see a bureaucratic institution that, though complex, serves the good of the wizarding world. However, the books go much deeper, revealing the Ministry's moral and ethical compromises, its systemic corruption, and the sinister political games that it plays. The Order of the Phoenix delves into this world, where the Ministry's resistance to the truth about Voldemort's return becomes a focal point of the plot, shedding light on the manipulation, secrecy, and authoritarianism that defines its operation. The Ministry of Magic's failure to recognize the return of Voldemort is a glaring example of its dysfunction. Throughout Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort regains full strength, it becomes clear to those who are paying attention that dark forces are stirring once again. However, the Ministry, particularly Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, refuses to acknowledge this reality. In the film, we see this briefly, but the book goes into much more detail, painting a picture of a leader so consumed by fear of losing his power that he will go to great lengths to suppress the truth. Fudge's refusal to accept the evidence of Voldemort's return is not merely an act of ignorance. It is a deliberate political move to maintain control over the wizarding world. The refusal to accept the facts leads to dangerous consequences, where the very fabric of wizarding society is threatened by the dark wizard's resurgence. This political maneuvering is not just about the Ministry's reluctance to face Voldemort's return, but also about the lengths to which the Ministry goes to discredit those who speak the truth. Harry Potter, having survived Voldemort's return, becomes the target of a smear campaign. The Ministry seeks to undermine his credibility, and instead of listening to Harry and the other witnesses, Fudge and his allies launch a campaign of misinformation. The film portrays this, but the books go further, depicting how the Ministry uses its power to twist facts, silence dissent, and manipulate the media. Harry becomes a symbol of the resistance. A figure fighting not just against Voldemort, but against a corrupt government that refuses to acknowledge the truth. The manipulation of the media is one of the most insidious aspects of the Ministry's actions. The Daily Prophet, the primary newspaper in the wizarding world, becomes a tool of the Ministry's propaganda. The Ministry uses it to spread lies and create a public perception that Voldemort's return is a mere fabrication by a delusional child. This is where the Ministry's control over information becomes clear. They don't just suppress the truth, they actively distort it, creating a climate of fear and doubt among the wizarding community. This mirrors real-world instances where governments manipulate media to control public perception, making it clear that the Ministry's actions are not just a reflection of fictional politics, but also a commentary on the dangers of unchecked power. A key example of this manipulation comes in the form of Dolores Umbridge, a character who becomes the embodiment of the Ministry's authoritarian approach. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Umbridge is appointed as the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher and later becomes the Hogwarts High Inquisitor. Her appointment is not accidental. She is a puppet of the Ministry sent to Hogwarts to ensure that the students, particularly Harry, do not challenge the official narrative of Voldemort's return. The Ministry's interference in Hogwarts, a place that should be a sanctuary of education and truth, is a powerful metaphor for the way in which totalitarian governments seek to control not just politics, but the very education of the next generation. Umbridge's methods cruelty, surveillance, and punishment, are not just about maintaining order, but about instilling fear and compliance. The Ministry's actions raise important questions about freedom of speech and individual rights within the magical community. The refusal to allow any investigations into Voldemort's return is not just a matter of political incompetence, but a blatant violation of the right to truth. By actively suppressing any attempts to investigate the situation, the Ministry shows its willingness to undermine the fundamental principles of justice and democracy. It's not just about power, it's about control. The fact that a significant portion of the wizarding world believes in the Ministry's lies. Despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, speaks volumes about how easily truth can be manipulated by those in power. But the situation goes further than just the political class. The corruption within the Ministry is so pervasive that it affects the very institutions meant to protect society. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement, which is supposed to uphold justice, is complicit in the Ministry's actions. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, we see how the Ministry's law enforcement is used to enforce silence and conformity. The Aurors, once champions of justice, are now mere pawns in a game of political survival. They are not concerned with the truth, but with maintaining the status quo no matter the cost. This highlights the way in which institutions can be corrupted when they are placed under the control of self-serving individuals who care more about preserving their own power than about serving the people. The Ministry's political games are also shown in the way it handles dissent. When Harry and his friends form Dumbledore's army, a secret group aimed at teaching students how to defend themselves against dark magic, the Ministry reacts with hostility. The idea of young people taking their education into their own hands, especially when the Ministry refuses to act, is seen as a threat to its authority. The Ministry's crackdown on Dumbledore's army is a perfect example of how authoritarian regimes view any form of rebellion as an act of treason. Harry's bravery in standing up to the Ministry not only exposes the Ministry's corruption, but also serves as a rallying cry for those who believe in the values of freedom and truth. It's not just the Ministry's actions that are concerning, but also the societal attitude that allows these actions to happen. The wizarding world is, for the most part, passive when it comes to questioning the Ministry's authority. This is evident in the way the public reacts to the Ministry's disinformation campaign. Despite the mounting evidence of Voldemort's return, the Ministry's spin on the situation is enough to convince many wizards that Harry is simply a liar or an attention seeker. This blind adherence to authority is one of the most dangerous aspects of the Ministry's power. It shows how easily a society can be manipulated when its people refuse to question what they are told. At the heart of the Ministry's actions is a deep fear of change. Voldemort's return represents not just a threat to the wizarding world, but a challenge to the established order. For Fudge and the Ministry, accepting the truth means acknowledging their own failure, and they are unwilling to do that. Their actions are not driven by a desire to protect the people, but by a desire to maintain control at all costs. This fear of change and the lengths to which the Ministry goes to avoid it is a central theme in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It's a theme that resonates not just within the fictional world of wizards and witches, but also in the real world, where leaders often resist change to protect their own positions of power. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, this political struggle comes to a head, with the Ministry becoming increasingly unstable as the war against Voldemort escalates. The Ministry's continued refusal to act decisively only worsens the situation, making it clear that their inability to deal with the Dark Wizard's return has placed everyone at risk. The books, unlike the films, offer a much deeper exploration of the Ministry's collapse, showing how its internal divisions and corrupt leadership lead to its ultimate failure. This fall from grace is not just a result of external threats, but of internal rot that has been allowed to fester for too long. As the war with Voldemort intensifies, the Ministry's role in the conflict becomes more complex. While it eventually acknowledges the truth, it is far too late. The damage has been done, and the Ministry's failure to act earlier has cost countless lives. The political games, there's corruption, and the denial of the truth have all played a part in the downfall of the wizarding world's institutions. This failure of leadership, both political and moral, is what makes the Ministry of Magic one of the most tragic elements of the Harry Potter series. Ultimately, the Ministry's actions in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix serve as a powerful reminder of the dangers of political corruption, the suppression of truth, and the consequences of inaction in the face of rising threats. The books expose the dark side of the Ministry in a way that the films only hint at, offering a chilling portrait of how power can be abused, how truth can be silenced, and how fear can destroy societies. The Ministry of Magic is not just a backdrop for the story, it is a crucial part of the conflict, representing the forces that resist change and fight against the light of truth. Number 25. The Myth of the Mirror of Erised. The Mirror of Erised is one of the most iconic magical objects in the Harry Potter universe, appearing first in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, in the US. However, the significance of this mirror is far deeper in J.K. Rowling's books than what is conveyed in the films, where it is merely seen as a tool for revealing one's deepest desires. In the books, the Mirror of Erised becomes a crucial element in understanding Harry Potter's inner conflict, his grief, and his growing awareness of the dangers of living in the past. It is not just about longing for what one can never have, but also about the battle between memory and hope, between looking forward and being trapped by the past. In the movie, the Mirror of Erised is introduced as a magical object that shows a person their heart's deepest desire. For Harry, it reveals his deceased parents, James and Lily Potter, whom he never knew. The image he sees is not just a mirage, but a reflection of the love and warmth he longed for as an orphan. This brief glimpse into the family he lost before he could even remember, it becomes one of the most emotional scenes in the series. However, in the book, the mirror's significance is portrayed with greater complexity. It is not merely a longing for what is lost, but a mirror to the soul itself. A tool that shows not only desire, but the very nature of one's internal struggles and the emptiness that can come from them. Harry, seeing his parents alive and well in the mirror, finds himself drawn to it again and again. It is not enough for him to see them once. He needs to return to relive those moments of imagined joy. The mirror becomes a symbol of his deep yearning, and it is here that he is confronted with his own internal conflict. The film shows his fascination, but it does not delve into the deeper consequences of this obsession. In the books, Harry's growing attachment to the mirror is portrayed as a dangerous emotional pitfall. The longer he gazes into it, the further he distances himself from the world around him. His obsession with what he cannot have, a family, a past, a life he never lived, becomes all-consuming. In these moments, Harry is vulnerable, not just to the mirror's power, but to the loss of his connection to reality. Albus Dumbledore, ever the wise guide, explains to Harry the true nature of the mirror's magic. "It does not show you your future or your destiny," Dumbledore tells him. "It shows you only what the world would be like if you could have your deepest desire, but it is only an illusion." The old wizard warns Harry of the danger that lies in spending too much time before the mirror, in feeding a longing that can never be fulfilled. This is a crucial turning point for Harry, as he begins to understand that the mirror is not a tool for healing, but a trap a place where desire and sorrow combine to obscure one's future. Dumbledore's words are intended to guide Harry away from a path of perpetual regret and fantasy, reminding him that his life is not defined by what he lost, but by what he is still capable of achieving. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the mirror is seen as a fascinating mystery, something that draws Harry in like a moth to a flame. The mirror, however, is not an escape from his problems, rather it is an illusion, as Dumbledore stresses. In the books, Harry is told that the mirror is dangerous and that the people who stare at it for too long forget to live. It is an important lesson that echoes throughout the series. Living in the past, even in a world of fantasy, is not the answer. Harry learns that the Mirror of Erised can show him his heart's desires, but it can also reveal his deepest vulnerabilities, his loneliness, his unfulfilled wishes, his grief over losing his parents. These emotions, though natural, are not enough to define him. He must find a way to move forward, to live with his past without being consumed by it. The mirror represents more than just the lure of nostalgia or longing for lost loved ones. It also symbolizes the temptation of inaction. Harry could easily have stayed in front of the mirror forever, forever chasing a past that could never be restored. But Dumbledore teaches him that this will not heal him. It is important to acknowledge one's grief, but it is equally important to move beyond it. The Mirror of Erised does not offer answers. It only provides the illusion of satisfaction. It is through this realization that Harry begins to understand the greater truth about his own journey